Let me introduce myself. My name's Jim Partridge. I'm the senior pastor at the King's Church in Mid Sussex, and I also get to serve as part of the New Ground Core team. And it's my privilege just to be able to share a few thoughts on the whole issue of the church's response to climate change. Firstly, let me apologise that I wasn't there actually for the conference. I was really looking forward to being with you all online. Unfortunately, I'd just come back from an overseas trip and was quite unwell through that night and on that morning, so I was unable to join you. But I'm glad to be able to film this contribution. Hopefully it's a helpful addition to everything else that was said on that morning. I think the other thing just to say is, in no way am I an expert on this subject. I'm a pastor, and with my team here in the church here, we're trying to make a response. So hopefully some of the things that I'm going to share today will be helpful to you. I think, first of all, let me just start by sharing some personal conviction, really, of why, as a pastor, I feel this subject is so important for churches to take seriously. I guess I have a deep personal conviction about the overall narrative of Scripture. Starting with a good creation that we read about in Genesis, a creation where everything was in balance and in harmony, and God saw all that he made and it was good. Creation was intended to be good. And then at the end of the story, of course, we see a new heaven and a new earth with God making all things new, and there being no brokenness, no pain, no sadness, no mourning. And I guess for me, I've always carried this deep conviction that if that's how the story began, in a good creation, and if it ends with a renewed creation, then somehow to know God in the era that we're living in means that we're wanting to restore, actually, as much as we are able, his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And if creation was good at its very kind of foundation and core, creation was good, then surely part of our responsibility as followers of Jesus, as stewards of this creation, is to restore and redeem that which was good. So to pray for his kingdom to come. Of course, we believe in personal salvation and transformation, in the gifts of the Spirit and power today, but also we're looking for the kingdom transformation in economic systems and structures and generosity and injustice, and in the very nature of creation itself. So I've always carried that kind of core conviction, and also kind of second, but linked in with that, always carried a conviction that one of the things that God asked humanity to do was to be good stewards of creation, to care for it, to cultivate it. Part of knowing Jesus and to see his kingdom come on earth is to think carefully about stewarding what he's given us. We talk about stewarding our money, we talk about stewarding our gifts, talk about stewarding our bodies, to make sure that actually we can offer our bodies as living sacrifices. Well, I believe that creation is a gift of God. And actually to be a good steward is to steward creation itself, to care for it, to cultivate it. So I've carried a deep conviction that that is part of what it means to know God, really. I guess a third conviction that I've always carried is that our choices, especially in the West, we've got to really think carefully about how our choices impact the global poor. And if somehow our consumerism, our consumption of goods and products for our ease and comfort is having a negative impact on the global poor, that's a spiritual issue, that's a justice issue. And though in the UK we may see hints at climate change, but it may not be a reality, we know that for so many, especially the poor in our world, climate change is having a hugely detrimental impact. And that for me is a massive issue. As it says in James 5 verse 4, it says, "Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you." There's this sense of there's choices that we make in privilege that can have an impact on the poor, and we need to listen to the cries of the poor and how that impacts the choices we make. Let me just kind of root that in experience. So I've traveled many times to Kenya, equatorial nation, spent a lot of time with Edward and Frida Berea. I've traveled into northern Kenya to the Samburu, where Samburu people for generations have known when to plant their crops because they know when the rains will come. And so there's a rhythm of life for the Samburu people around when the rainy seasons are. Well, in recent years, those rhythms in creation are no longer there. There can be extended periods of time where there is no rain, which we've seen recently with a devastating drought in that part of Africa. So there aren't rains that come. The whole kind of rhythm and balance of life and sustenance and sustainability has gone. But then when the rains do come, they're so extreme, they're monsoon rains, that they don't actually help crops to grow. They destroy crops, they wash away topsoil, they remove infrastructure. So I've been to Samburu, I've seen the impact that climate change is having on the Samburu people. And even just last summer, I was in Kenya with Edward and Frida Berea, who oversee all Newfrontiers work there. And Edward and Frida, you may know, are very entrepreneurial, run different businesses. They went to take me to one of their fields that they've owned all their married life, 39 years. This field has always given them crops. And they said, we've just, for the first time ever, this crop has failed in this field. And literally the mud had become like sands, and the little seedlings of plants had become like dust. They literally just were like dust in my hands. And it's because of a lack of rain. And they said this is the first time that this region has known that. So I've seen firsthand the impact that climate change has had on the world's poor. And I think as global citizens, as those who say we must love our neighbour, then it must have an impact on the global poor in our responsibility. And finally, I guess the fourth conviction personally that I have is that this issue of climate change, this issue of sustainability and how we look after the planet is such a core and important issue for an emerging generation, for those in their teens and 20s, that if the church isn't saying anything about this, I think we will be seen actually as irrelevant. I think actually this issue as a justice issue, as a global awareness issue, is so important to engage an emerging generation with. And I think the church has something to say. So I think we miss an opportunity if we don't talk about it in terms of how we connect with another generation. So they're just a few kind of personal convictions. So what are we doing as a church? So I knew that I wouldn't be the one that was able to kind of drive this forward. We agreed as an eldership team here that we needed to make a response as a church. And like I said, we're not experts, we're just doing a few things. So there's a few things we've made a commitment to do. The first thing was to establish a team. We needed to get a team of people in the church that we knew would be able to help us in the decisions that we made and thinking through what we did as a local church. We've made some decisions. We've made a decision. We're going to teach at least once a year on the issue of the environment and the climate and our responsibility as citizens of the kingdom of heaven to think through what it means to cultivate and care for creation. We are working towards achieving our Bronze Eco Award as a church. A number of things, some of you will have heard of that. There are a number of things that we're looking to do over the years to come. We're trying to reduce our carbon footprint as a building. We've got our own building. We're looking at ways that we can do that. We launched the conversation really in 2019. We did a series called God Cares, and one of those messages was God cares about the planet. And on that Sunday when we taught, we gave everyone in our congregation, about a church of 400 or so, their own keep cup. We decided that it was not okay for us to recycle hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of disposable cups every week. Not knowing for sure whether the recycling was happening properly. We've got to get rid of this throwaway culture. And so we actually invested in every single church adult who has teas and coffees on a Sunday to have their own keep cup. And still now to this day, when we do refreshments, we encourage to bring their own keep cups. And we always have a box of others for visitors to use and that kind of thing. We wanted to make a statement. We're going to stop using disposable cups, and this just one step, a small thing that we did. So we did that back in 2019. We started teaching on the subject. On an online conference that we did, a prayer evening, church family night, we declared that we believed there was a climate emergency that we needed to respond to. We said that to our church and that we were looking to make certain commitments as a local congregation. And like I said, we've built a team looking at different aspects of what we can do to achieve our Bronze Award as an eco church. So a few things. We decided we're going to have a page on our website, just so it is visible that this was an issue we took seriously, outlining some of the pages that we had. We wanted to actually state that as a public value. We haven't got much green space. We're on an industrial estate. but we have started planting some trees on the green space that we have. We are looking to help the church pray at key moments like the COP summits, whether it be publicly on a Sunday or through social media when there's global events that are going on as governments are gathering. We're trying to equip the church to know how to pray and have kind of climate Sundays. We use social media quite a lot to increase awareness. So, for example, we did a load of posts this Christmas about thinking through how to have a sustainable Christmas, from the kind of things that we shop, how we wrap our paper, the kind of wrap our presents, the amount of plastic we're using, sustainability in terms of presents, all those kind of things. Just giving little tips for thinking how can we do kind of Christmas sustainably. We are doing an audit in our building, how our building is used, and how we can actually increasingly be more sustainable in our practices here. We run a community clothes swap, which tends to be a women's clothes swap, because we realise if it is blokes, they're just like, here's a pair of blue jeans, do you want a pair of blue jeans? Doesn't kind of work. So we do a community clothes swap. But with that, we had like loads of people from the church and from the community just trying to, again, encourage us away from a throwaway culture about sustainability, reusing clothes. But also, again, in the build up to that, we did a load of stuff on social media about the fashion industry, about actually some of the practices in the fashion industry that are harmful to the planet, about how actually we can recycle and reuse our clothing in a way that's far more sustainable. We doing small things, like in the summer we did a nature walk after church one Sunday, just encouraging people after church to go for a walk together, to look at creation, enjoy it, appreciate it, networking with other churches as well. Just a few things, and they're not major things. If, like I said, I don't feel like we're experts. We're just trying to get the subject live in our community and in our church. So we're looking to build on that in the future. We're thinking through as a church the large events that we do and the conferences that we do, other ways that we can actually make those conferences more sustainable, thinking through actually what's given out, again, things like disposable cups, all of those kind of things. What can we do that's a bit more sustainable? How we can use our building and our land in a more kind of eco-friendly way. Little things like we've put out some cycle racks for people to tie up their bikes to, but they're also planters as well. So we're growing plants that encourage wildlife, that kind of thing as well. Again, we've booked a Sunday this year in November to tie in with the COP summit, so we can actually be raising awareness, talking about the issues, praying into it as well. Going to be hosting another local nature walk, another clothes swap, those kind of things. Small steps, but we're trying to take it seriously. And really, we as an eldership team have owned this, delegated it to a team to continually look at ways that we can raise awareness, pray, and make small steps, really to feel like we're making a contribution to be good stewards of creation. So there's a few things that we're doing. I hope that's helpful. If people want to find out more, they can contact us, have a look at our website, tkc.org.uk. Our team would love to chat with any others who want to find out what we're doing. God bless you. I hope that's been a helpful contribution to the conversation. Take care. Bye.
Hi there, my name's Chris, and I'm based here at Gateway Church in Leeds. In terms of my personal journey with regards to climate change issues, I can remember back in 2009 being involved in a project called Hope for Planet Earth. And what was fascinating is in this project, talking about the hope Christians have, I think engaging with people not of faith, they found it fascinating that the church actually had sober yet hope-filled response to some of these big issues. And then I can remember engaging with Christians and some of them just feeling so relieved and excited that finally they felt in some ways Christians were starting to engage in a more widespread way with this issue. And so I suppose I've always felt that this is an important thing. But I think if I'm going to be really honest, as a church leader, knowing how to respond, there was a real hesitance in me. I'm very aware that this issue has very polarized positions often. and there was a kind of hesitancy of causing disagreement, causing fraction. And there was also, I guess, a fear in me of not keeping the main thing, and detracting from the good news of Jesus. I think really, though, we overcame some of these hurdles by finding a champion who could help focus thoughtfully on how to navigate these issues well and lead us as a church community through this. And so for us, that was John Davey, who leads CreationCall for ChristCentral. And John just has sent us several papers, several practical ways he feels we can engage on the issue. And as an eldership team and a wider leadership team, processing those and responding accordingly has been great. And it hasn't been easy. There's definitely been some difficult conversations throughout that process in terms of engaging with some of those polarized views I mentioned. But actually, I think now as I look towards Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I look towards my kids, who this will be, one of the main issues for them growing up. And seeing them now set up these projects where they're very small but are engaging in these issues, I think for me it gives me a sense of courage, that actually we have in some ways formed an apologetic, a defense for some of the I guess devastation that climate change is causing already around the world, and that this is a justice issue. And the apologetic we have is this, that we ultimately have a hope, that Jesus has promised he will never destroy the world again, and he has promised that he will return and make every wrong thing right. But we also have the apologetic, the defense, that actually we are working and we're trying our best imperfectly, yes, getting things wrong, yes, but we are trying in meaningful ways to respond to this issue as a Christian community, because we believe it is important.
Hi, I'm John Davey. As Chris mentioned, I was initially the person that championed environmental matters in Gateway Church. Once our leaders had decided that this was an issue we really needed to take seriously, we needed to take some steps to actually put that into practice. One of the first things we did was begin to put hints in our weekly bulletin from time to time, giving suggestions about how people could change their lifestyle. And as that's gone into the time of the cost of living crisis, we've particularly focused on the many things that can actually be done saving money as well as helping to save the world. But we need to also take some bigger steps as a church. We joined Arosha's Eco-Church program, which is a kind of structured way of looking at how, as a collective body in the church, you make steps towards caring for the world. And with that, we've actually received their bronze award, their first level award for progress. In November 2020, we made a climate emergency declaration. This was really a way of just saying, we're in for this. It's a public declaration of our position. We publicised that to the local MP and councillors and to others. One of the opportunities we have, which is probably not common amongst ChristCentral churches, is we have an old Anglican church building surrounded by a large graveyard, which had been very neglected for years. We'd tried to develop it for student flats, but we couldn't get planning permission. And we eventually realised here's a wonderful opportunity to do something for the environment, and we're now at the beginning of a project to restore this as a nature area that's a biodiversity hotspot, and that can be a resource to the local community. In fact, even as I'm speaking, there's a group of people doing hedge planting around the boundaries. When you say it like that, it sounds like we've done a lot. In fact, in many ways, it's felt like very, very slow progress, slow in relation to the urgency of the problems that we face. And to be honest, to be fair, not everybody in the church has been completely on board. Perhaps just a few people have been concerned about the way things have been going. And so we've not wanted to push beyond what we can kind of cope with together. We need to maintain the unity of the Spirit. But it's been very encouraging just to remember that ultimately our job is not to save the world, but to be faithful to the Lord. He doesn't ask us for perfection. He asks us just to take the next step. And so I just want to now introduce Hannah Clark, our youth leader, who will tell us about a new project just recently started that we think is quite exciting.
Hello. So I'm going to tell you about EcoGen, which is our new youth project. So I'm going to tell you what EcoGen is, why we're doing it, and how we've got started. So what is EcoGen? So EcoGen was the initiative of an organisation called Missional Generation, and we've worked with them to get our project started. And the main aims of EcoGen is to encourage the youth to do something active in the church, serving their church, and encouraging the church to think about environmental issues. And they do that by setting up their own refilling store. So for those that don't know, a refilling store is where you have your own container and you take that container to the shop and you fill it up, and that reduces plastic waste. So why are we doing this project? One of our youth said this about EcoGen. It's quite inspirational, really. We are helping the church do our bit. And I thought that statement really did sum up why EcoGen is so important. And there's two sides to that statement: helping the church and do our bit. So firstly, do our bit. Environmental issues are so relevant to young people at the moment. It's a topic that is discussed and taught in schools, and many young people are really passionate about this. And I think that is reflected in the media. So you will have all heard of Greta Thunberg and the work that she's done. And more recently, I read a news article about a young lady called Ines Fitzgerald. She's 16 years old, and she has refused to go to the cross-country world championships in Australia because she refuses to fly that distance because of the environmental impact. But for me, rather than just the general concern of young people, it's the concern of the young people in the church that is really significant. So Tearfund did a survey recently asking Christian teenagers what they thought about climate issues, and 90% of the people asked thought that climate change was a serious concern, but only 10% of them thought that churches was doing something about it. And if we don't listen to our young people and we don't take this issue seriously, we could lose the young people from the church. Particularly the youth in our church, we asked them, what is on your heart? What issues do you want the church to be praying about? And one of the top issues that they had was caring for creation. It is something that they really care about at the moment, and EcoGen gives them something that they can do to do their bit, and something that they can do to encourage other people in the church to do their bit too. Secondly, and something that I'm really passionate about, helping the church. The youth need to be active and helping the church. In Psalm 78, it says this: "We will tell the next generation praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes of Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn will tell their children." The Bible is so clear that God cares about our young people, and that we need to be passing on the baton, if you like, to them. We need to be telling the young people about Jesus, about the good news, but not just telling them. We want to give them opportunities to grow. We want to invest in them. We want to see them growing into the leaders of the church tomorrow. That is so important. But not only becoming the leaders of the church tomorrow, we want to see them serving and leading in the church today. They are part of the body of Christ, and we want them to be active members of that church. And the EcoGen project is a fantastic way of getting the youth to lead and serve in the church and have their voice heard. So how did we start EcoGen? Well, initially we had 5 training sessions for all the youth involved. These covered the basics of the plastic problem. Why should we care about excess packaging? The basics of why the Bible encourages us to care about creation, and the basics of how we're going to do this, how we're going to set up our eco store. And then after that, they put together an all-age talk, which they delivered to the church on a Sunday during the Sunday services. So they did this instead of a sermon. And it was a Bible-based talk based on the teaching they had received in the training sessions. And then they told the church all about the EcoGen project. And it was absolutely fantastic to see them up front and leading from the front of church. That was amazing to see, actually. And then we had our first trial of the EcoGen store. So we trialled that in December, and we just started with 2 projects initially, which was dried pasta and multi-purpose cleaner. And we plan to have the store open once a month. So we have now done the January and February stores, and we plan on expanding the range of products. Now it hasn't been smooth ride to get it started. There has been its various challenges, particularly on the amount of time actually it's taken to get it set up. And the first trials haven't necessarily gone smoothly. We've got lessons to learn, but I have hope that actually once we get started, it will become a really good store, and we'll see the church really getting behind this project and doing our bit. Even the journey itself, I think, actually we've already seen the benefits in terms of the youth engagement in this project. So I'm really pleased that we started EcoGen.
64 is the mark I got on a module about climate change while I was at university in 2005, and it was in those 10 weeks where my understanding of the scientific evidence for climate change was solidified, and I became convinced the climate of our planet is changing. And although it's changed throughout history, the current change is largely due to human factors, especially the emission of greenhouse gases. My name is Adam Price. I'm the team leader at Hope Church in Harrogate, and I just want to take a few minutes to tell you something of the story of my journey from that place through to where we find ourselves today as a church. You see, although in 2005 I was scientifically convinced, it wasn't until early 2019 where really for me there was a connection between that scientific understanding and my faith. You see, in the in-between years, I would probably have told you that it was much more important for us to be trying to win people for Jesus and build the church than to be concerning ourselves with the topic of caring for creation. But that all changed really on one Monday afternoon. I was sat at theological college listening to Ruth Valerio lecture, and I couldn't really tell you what she said. I know she shared some stories from her own life. I know she opened the scriptures, but somewhere during that hour and a half, something connected for me and linked this scientific conviction with a faith conviction that this is something that we as Christians, as followers of Jesus, need to be taking seriously. And I came home, quite frankly, a changed man. It was an afternoon of revelation for me. And my wife and I, we talked into the night about it as a topic. And as a family, we began to make a few small scale changes to our lives as a result of what I'd heard. Just simple things, the simple things that many people change, our shopping habits, our eating habits. We deliberately tried to enjoy creation more with this fresh understanding of what it was. we also began just to talk then with people in our lives around us, particularly in our church, and found there were several others brimming with an enthusiasm and a passion and a conviction that this was something we should be acting upon in the life of the church. And so the question then came to me as the team leader: what are we going to do to introduce this topic, which we've never even talked about, into the life of the church? And so in late 2020, so that's a full 18 months of this impacting in our personal lives before really coming to the church with it, I preached a message on the environment and justice in a wider series we were doing on Nehemiah, actually, and began just to lay out that this is a justice issue that we as followers of Jesus are to care about and to act upon. We recognised, however, this couldn't just be something I preached on once and the world was changed, nor was it something that I could be the primary driver of. And so we collected together a group of people from the church who are passionate about this topic and launched an eco team to really help come up with ideas and drive things forward. And one of the key questions for us is what does a church like us do to really make inroads on this topic? You see, we drew on various resources that are out there from other organisations, but so many of them had sections on buildings or ground or investment. And we're like, well, we don't have any buildings or land, and we've not got any investments as a church. We don't have these things. How do we play our part if that's not the world that we're living in, if that's not our context as a church? And we realised that for us, the big challenge is, hey, we have to move hearts and minds to take this topic seriously. And so that's what we have set out to do here at Hope Church in Harrogate. And there are a few things we've realised we need to do. Number one is we need to keep the topic front and centre, people being reminded of it all the time, but without feeling lectured about it. And so one of the major things we've done for that is we have a short slot in our weekly newsletter with a tip about how we can live with a more environmentally conscious attitude, how we can care for creation in our daily lives. The second thing we've done is put together some programs to try and move people forward a step or two from where they currently are. So we run termly midweek group programs here at Hope, and we've done one of those around people who are already passionate and what might they do. And so we've looked at topics like retrofitting and advocacy and how to talk about it with people in a convincing and compelling way. We've run another group which was specifically aimed, to be honest, at the skeptical or the ignorant. We kind of said, hey, if you're kind of interested but not sure this is the group for you. And we started on a much lower level, look at the impacts of food and transport and other things. And one of my big wins from the sort of journey we've been on so far was one man who at the beginning of that group said to me, Adam, why should I take this more seriously than all the other things that I'm told are important? Why should I act on this? And if I'm honest, week by week, I wasn't really sure we got through to him. But last summer, I went round to his house to drop something off, and he was in his back garden digging a pond as a result of the things he'd heard in that group, an understanding of the multiplier effect of a pond in your garden in terms of plant life, wildlife, and the effects on the wider environment. And I thought, wow, you never really know what's going on for people until you see something. We've connected with other local groups. We have members of our church now part of Zero Carbon Harrogate, and interacting with other things. We've partnered in with CreationCall in our wider ChristCentral family. And our eco team are at the moment liaising with our different team leaders, trying to work out how do we bring this care for creation into our life as a church as we follow Jesus together. Not so it's top down imposed upon people, but so that understanding the importance of the issue, teams can take responsibility for what it looks like in their world, in their context. We're still very much learning. We as a family still very much learning. And I kind of live by the mantra that every little step we take, every time we make a positive decision in this is better than not having done so. There are many times in life where it's hard and we slip back and it drops off the agenda slightly and we go again. And every time there's a little win, it is a win. And it's that kind of hope-filled perspective that we as followers of Jesus are able to bring to this topic of caring for creation, which I'm convinced is one of the key cultural topics for Christians and followers of Jesus to be speaking into in our day. I hope that fly past of the last few years has been helpful for you, and I am praying for you in your journeys as both individual followers of Jesus and as churches in caring for creation. Thanks for listening.